Hey there. So I decided I wanted to make a video on what it's like to be blind. Most of you might realize that when I make these videos, I'm not usually looking straight at the camera. And if I do, like for a brief moment here and there, I try and attempt to do that. But I am legally blind and I have no central vision. I actually have a lot of blind spots. Ironically, the eye disease that I have is called Stargard's, spelt like a star guard, but with a TS at the end, just in case any of you want to research it. But I've been considered legally blind since I was 21, and I am 45 now. So it's been a hot minute, and I've kind of gotten accustomed to it. I'm also very grateful for it, which is the point of the video. It's been one of the bigger catalysts to my awakening, and I still, to this day, break through barriers that my mind tries to create based on what the patterns of a blind person would normally be. And mind you, some things are unavoidable. You get a little hermity if you don't know a lot of people, and if you have to take special transportation to get places, if you're, a being that's kind of living independently. But just like everything else, any other struggle you have, it doesn't matter what the trauma is or what the catalyst or the pressure comes from. There's like the same stages of awakening that you have to go through. With blindness, just like with anything else, except, you're kind of gifted with these extrasensory gifts that you're not aware of for a while because you're too busy going, oh, I'm blind and everyone else can see and what the heck am I here for? And, for me, I used to work customer service jobs when I was in my teens and 20s, and so well that I'd end up as a manager in training or whatever before I would change jobs or what have you. It took me a long time to admit that I wasn't able to do what everybody else was doing and that I didn't have to force myself to try. It had nothing to do with pattern recognition back then, because I didn't actually start this awakening process legitly until I was 28. And there's another story that catalyzed that, but identifying that. And don't mind me, I'm going to get up and close my bedroom door while I'm on the video because I forgot. And I have a roommate, so give them their privacy and vice versa. But yeah, so being blind leads you down, the same awakening process of figuring out who you are and how you fit into society, and going through the feeling isolated and rejected and abandoned, if you will. Even, I know, it sounds silly, but years ago when I would struggle and I was still trying to get used to realizing that, look, you're always going to take a special bus, lady. I might know people or date people on occasion that, have a vehicle and can drive me around and whatnot. But, I had to get used to that. And aside from that, I had to surrender so much control because the special bus systems, they don't just pick you up whenever, you're restricted to and I live in the desert, so I have a limited bus system. When I lived in Orange County, it was a different story. You could have a lot more ride availability, but they pretty much tell you you're allowed to travel on this time, and this time in the morning, come back at this time, and you have to go all out to try and get it all managed. And sometimes I'm just going to the grocery store for a 30-minute grocery trip, but I have to book a 3-hour allotment, right? So that means I'm waiting either an hour before or an hour after, just kind of lingering around looking like a home free person outside the grocery store. Every once in a while, people saying, do you have a ride home? And, it causes you to face a lot of, surrendering of control because you have to go with the blessings that unfold, and see how the world and the universe will provide for you everything that you need, because wherever there's a will, there's a way, and if there's not, then the way is to just be here and not be trying to get somewhere else, aside from, you know, the basic stuff that everybody has to go through, and I can't speak for all blind people, but I know in my circumstance, my eyes operate a little uniquely. I see things in pixels. You know, I see all objects. I won't run into anything. In fact, most people will freak out, like maybe even making weird assumptions that I can see, because I can walk around and I won't run into a wall or a huge object. I mean, I might like drop my whole body into a driveway when it goes down like that small little grade, you know, and I just miss the depth perception in the ground or something, but I usually don't run into anything. But most people like have no clue exactly how blind I am, just because I'm very high functioning and I don't need a cane, so I don't carry one. So most people think that I'm just, you know, the average Jill walking around or whatnot. But this disease has given me the ability to see the world differently, like physically. So like in that blind spot that I talk about, there is like a spinning golden, I believe, Stargate, definitely a portal, within my field of vision that is always spinning. You know, one part of it spins, they spin in a couple different directions. Like the center spins in one way, an outer ring spins in another. There's not really a lot of details to it. It's just like this glowing spin, and it's over the field of everything. I'm pretty sure I'm seeing a lot of things in that I'm not even trying to identify. I do know that what I look at becomes blessed. I do know that I create change in people's lives when I'm focused on them, and vice versa. I know that being blind has helped me tap into like so many superpowers. You know, like a lot of people think that being blind is a curse, and it takes a while before you realize the blessing that it is, first off, in just the basic levels. But it's beyond the blessing that any of us can possibly think that it is, because it allows us to feel, which is, you know, like everybody's being asked to do what us blind people naturally do all the time, you know, feel their surroundings, you know, try and tune in to what's happening around you. When you talk to somebody, you usually can hear a lot more than just the words they're speaking. There's a biofield to everyone, and when you're blind and you have your sight inhibited in some way, then your other senses pick up. And I've noticed that my spiritual senses picked up more than anything once I was over the poor pitiful me victim party in my 30s, and when I started the whole real awakening process and started listening to people like Wayne Dyer say, if you change the way you think, you change your world, you know? That's a dumbed down version of that, and that came from someone else, which I couldn't remember the name of. I'm not big on remembering names and things like that. I recognize the messages and the wisdom gained from all the struggles. And, you know, being blind kind of makes you a superhuman, so to speak. You know, in order to see with this eye, it helps that these ones don't work as good. In fact, I think there's some scripture or something somewhere that says, let's see, let thine eye be single, and your body will be full of light. I know it sounds ironic, but you really have no choice but to end up using whatever senses are available to you. And people with blindness have the ability to tap into seeing things at a deeper level, just as like a default mode. And then you can just like kind of go from there, of course. But, you know, it's taught me so much about receiving. I mean, like, what an ironic joke to be like born super independent. You know, like I even took care of my mother growing up, and you know, so I developed some great codependent natures, and to be able to see that, I kind of lost track of what I was saying there, but to be able to take care of myself. Yeah, I completely lost whatever thought that was, but there's just so much going on with the gifts that we're able to use and inhabit, and all of the things that we can unfold when you can't see. You can see a heart with your own heart. You don't need physical eyes to see anything. And I don't know if you've ever heard about this, but they say that seers sometimes have low vision. I also like to reference the fact that the white buffalo was albino, and they had very low vision as well. They were divinely protected. But I tell you, being blind is more of a gift than it is a struggle. And even today, like I do a lot of writing. Those that follow me on social media, or that might cross my stuff, and one day see my books, that's not an easy task for me. I enjoy this. I enjoy channeling information. I live and thrive, and my deepest desires include having conversations like this, like as often as humanly possible. And in doing those writings and being blind, it brings forth quite a bit of a challenge when it comes to wanting to do anything with the channels and the writings that come through. Like, as much as it's fun to channel it and it feels good and on point and exactly what's happening, when it comes to wanting to put those and having the desire to put those into a transcripted form, or, that's great when you can do that automatically. But with my writings, that's not as easy, although I'm learning. At some point, my writings will be in a verbal video of some sort, possibly, but normally, like if I want to publish my books and doing all those things, there's like a whole process of sitting at my computer and editing writings and organizing things and doing things, and they've seemed to like create this challenge. Don't get me wrong, but it's just another opportunity to see how, even with the blindness and even with the struggles that I have had with the computer, I was able to open doors that make it a lot easier for me to do, like a computer guy that programmed my computer to speak to me. And I'm sure I could talk to it, but I don't really like to do that. And then, I can magnify it as big as I want. I can make a letter like 3 inches big, although the pixels are all over the place if I were to do that, and it's not really required. But even when it's magnified, I still have my face like 3 inches from the screen and all that jazz. And so it's like, it presents its challenge, but it's like, I have such a calling in my heart to do it, that even though it's challenging and I'm considered legally blind, it is still something that is unfolding and is becoming more of the magic of what this blindness kind of gives me. Because honestly, because I'm blind, I'm able to write books in much easier forms. Like, there'll be some sort of portion of my book that says, hey, by the way, guess what? I wrote this whole book from my notepad on my phone. Because that's what's up. That's what I have. I can't write things down and read my own writing because I'm that blind. So even if I were to like try and do it really slowly, and like, oh my gosh, how hard would it be to follow a flow of thought if I had to do that? So, I mean, it was just the only logical option. And I know a lot of people probably do that, but because I'm blind, I'm used to talk texting and speech to text. And, like, there's all these little shortcuts that, even though we're visually impaired and it should take 10 times longer, it actually cuts the time in half in some degrees when you start learning these little tidbits and these shortcuts. So, I'm hoping that my hand wasn't covering the microphone the whole time, because I just realized my palm was right down there. But I really just wanted to make this video so that you could know that if there's any kind of eyesight issues or visual issues that you might have, that they're way more of a gift than they are a curse. And the same thing goes for people that are aging. I've met some aging people that ended up with the same eye disease or some type of macular degeneration, which is the class of eye disease I have. And they've seen me, and they said that when they saw me functioning, it made them realize that losing their sight wasn't going to be as scary as they thought, because, you know, like, they really loved reading books, or they really liked doing this and that, and they thought that they would struggle a lot. But seeing how optimistic I am and how I can pretty much do anything I put my mind to, and I won't let anything hold me back, really inspires them to just keep on going and doing whatever it is they're doing, you know, and not be afraid or upset that they're losing something. And as they lose it, they'll start gaining. And that's kind of like the way it normally works, you know, when you get older, you lose your hearing and your sight, and it really brings you inside, you know. It leaves you no option but to, like, go deep within, because the outside distractions are becoming quieted, so to speak, or blurrier. So you're not hyper vigilant on focusing everything. You're just kind of, you know, being. Anyway, just thought I'd share that. And I love you guys. Have a great day.